Welcome to the KSLA Cafe. I'm Dominique Ben alongside Adria Goins. We're talking about a very important topic to parents, keeping your kids safe, how to protect your kids from being abducted. And this topic was kind of born out of something that happened last week in Bossier Parish. Preteen, she says that someone approached her in a sedan, and so Bossier Parish investigators say still haven't found that person, but they are investigating and they're looking at cameras in that subdivision, and they've gone through hours and hours of tape. So we kind of started talking amongst ourselves after that incident, or the alleged incident, and you know, we started talking, hey, we need to talk about this.
And I think the reason why this was so important was because instantly as parents we were like, oh my goodness, what do you say to your kid? What do you tell your child? That day after that happened, I can remember my son got in the car after he got home. We were going to run some errands, and I said, I want to talk to you about a very important issue. And I reiterated to him, don't ever get in the car with a stranger. Do not ever, you know, what do you do if someone approaches you, you know, and he's like, you yell screaming and you do that. You know, he just told them everything that we told him to kind of do whenever, you know, and I hope to myself, man, I hope that that's the right thing for them to do. And am I teaching him the proper things? Does he know what to look for? So I think that's something that really interests both of us. We need to make sure you guys know exactly what to do if an instance like this happens again.
You know, something jumped out when we were talking about it. You know, we've seen on different networks where they do the faux kidnapping, and they have someone walking in a park, and they have parents that have signed up to be a part of this experiment, and they have their children and they're playing, and the parents are kind of watching from a distance, and then someone comes along with a cute little dog. You know, my little girl, to be honest, she's probably gonna wanna look at the dog, pet the dog, but what do you do in that instance? I mean, what are we telling our children when they're approached by strangers with cute little pets? I'm not saying that everybody has a cute little pet that is
or
dangerous.
a handful of candy.
Right, a handful of candy, that's right. My little girl loves candy too. And so it is true to open up those conversations with your children. Stranger danger, that's what we've been taught all of our lives. And we're kind of getting away from that. It may not, I'm not saying it's wrong to teach your children stranger danger, but it may not be the most effective for that.
And that's why we called in our first guest with us, Chris Cantrell from Federal Bureau of Investigations here, specializes in these kinds of crimes against children. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Chris.
We wanted to have an expert that's here to really help us understand the likelihood of this scenario really ever happening to our child, and also what we as parents, you know, those of you out there probably want to know too, what do we do? Are we doing the right things to keep our kids safe? So first I want to ask you, what's the likelihood of a child in our area facing this kind of scenario where they could be kidnapped like that?
Well, there's always an opportunity, but I would tell you historically, and what we see across each year is that stranger abductions are actually very small. It's more family. If you take the parental abductions out, then it's going to be acquaintances, neighbors, friends of the family. That's the larger number of those who are abducted. I'd say on a yearly basis for the FBI, it's about 100.
Wow.
About 100 stranger abductions a year. What's challenging is the fact that they are stranger abductions. So as an investigator, the time is of the essence in any abduction or kidnapping, but especially stranger abductions.
Because at that point, you really have no clue where this child has gone. So what's the process like? Where do you start when you go, you know, when you realize a child has been abducted by a stranger? Well,
one of the things that we really work hard at is just that partnership between state, local, and other federal entities. That is key because time is of the essence. So most of these reports come in at the local level, and as soon as they do, that information flows up. Because of our partnerships, it's shared, so we can all do a combined effort, bring in resources, bring in technical resources as well to kind of assist in that. Because of that limited time, those first couple hours are very crucial.
Of the 100 cases on average that may happen each year, do you have an average or an estimate of the recovery?
You know, I don't know the exact numbers, but I'd say they're fairly high because of our methodology of coming in and addressing it earlier. We have a national child abduction response deployment, child reduction rapid deployment team, the FBI does, and we partner with our locals. So that national team is just basically experienced agents who've worked these type of cases over and over again, and they get a kind of a sense of methodology and just having that experience. So we deploy them out early as soon as we get the need, and we'll send them out there. We found that that's been very helpful, because you may have a smaller department that gets one of these in 10 years.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it, you really don't know some of the best practices or some of the new resources that can be applied to it.
I think we were talking earlier about just cases in our generation of growing up. I was a young girl and living in Florida. I'm from Florida when the Adam Walsh case happened, and we still don't know what happened to Adam. Of course, his dad, very popular on the show for missing and exploited children. So it's when I think about that, and I think about Justin Bloxham, it scares me. It scares me. And I think you mentioned earlier something about mobile apps. We're in a generation now and a time now where everybody has an iPad, a cell phone, even the little ones, and they're downloading these apps that can be hidden. I think just last week, I can't remember the state, there was a little boy, was he 13 or 12? And he was driving a car. He drove the car. How many hours was that?
Yeah,
Like 4?
yeah, a couple hours
To meet a stranger that he met through one of the mobile apps. So I think it's also good to have a conversation with your children at that preteen level to know those apps, to see what they're looking at.
Yes.
Yeah, because it says right here that the most common age group that's really abducted is between 12 and 17, and they're girls. And a lot of those girls are likely on social media. They meet some of these strangers through social media apps. So how do you approach a mom with a child, not necessarily a girl, boys even, to be careful with these apps? What do you say to them?
Well, one thing is, in that age group, 12 to 17, it could be abduction, but it also could be trafficking, because that's a crucial age. What happens with the social media and the apps is that it becomes a perfect opportunity for grooming, and the grooming process is crucial, because what happens is you get a bad guy, bad girl, talking to a juvenile, a preteen, teen, and uses those times to build a rapport. And you mentioned Justin Bloxham. In that case, it was, he was under the impression it was age appropriate, so you either disguise who you are or you don't. But in any of those cases, you build rapport, and that rapport could be in 1 hour, it could be 15 days. I mean, there's no time limit. So what I always tell parents, you just got to have that open communication. Because if your child's taking the phone, or they have a computer in the room, and mom, son, we have a spat, you send me to my room. Now, obviously, at that moment, I don't like my mom, and I'm upset with my mom. But if I can get in that room, and now I'm on one of my social sites, and somebody's saying, your mom doesn't understand you, your mom doesn't know, I do. And so now you see this shift in that rapport, and then that false sense of, hey, love or security, and then you tend to that. So you have to have their communication. You have to know what apps they're using. The apps all are created for a positive purpose, but unfortunately, nefarious things can occur from that. So you have to stay on top of the app. What's the security? What does it offer? Talk to your children. I talk to kids, and it's amazing. At my age, I'll do a survey, and now I'm seeing in elementary schools, some of them have social apps that parents are allowing and hopefully governing, but having 500, 600, 1,000 friends, and I always say I've had the opportunity to travel around the world a couple of times, and I can't think of 150 that would be really wanting to, but that's what the kids, that's what they do. They want those friends, and they put the information out, which makes it challenging, especially on a stranger abduction, because now you're opening up a lot of information. So somebody could travel from 4 states over, knowing that on this day you have soccer practice, your parents don't work, or they work late, or your parents are out of town. All that information, it's just a lot of information that could be used for.
So we need to be talking with our kids about having a, not giving too much away on social media, because I think
a
lot of times,
schedule.
Your location. A lot of times you see when they post something, it shows their location.
Yes.
And that's very, very scary.
Yeah, that's something that I definitely have a conversation with my kids once they get to that age group. You know, being very selective about what they put on Facebook or any other social media app, turning off their locations, because, you know, I know I'm going to be that terrible mom that's like into their business, you know, but I feel like you kind of need to make sure, especially at this day and age. For the kids that are younger, you know, we were talking about cases that had happened previously, and like the Walsh case for you. For me, it was the Morgan Nick case out of Northwest Arkansas in Alma. That devastated a community. They've still never found her. This little girl was so young. We both have young children. I know a lot of our viewers do. What are the things we need to be telling our kids to keep them safe? Because I know after this scenario that we had here, I was with my son in the car and I was telling him, don't ever speak to strangers. Don't ever get into a car with strangers. Are we as parents telling them the right things to keep them safe?
Yes, I think to avoid is first to actually avoid situational awareness. Stay away. It's when a child's younger, there's more hovering with the parents or grandparents or whatever that support network is. So it's a little easier. But as they start branching out, now you're letting your child ride the bike to the bus stop or ride the bike to the school or go to the bus stop. And that's, you know, that becomes the time where they really have to come back on that education. But you do have to teach them situational awareness. I pass a couple bus stops on the way to work, and I see tweens or teenagers, and they had headphones on, they're on the phone, there's zero situational awareness, they're not paying attention. But that's one. Two is the buddy system, you know, look out for each other. And you've got to run through those scenarios. I was talking to this very, very beautiful woman the other day, my wife. She's a school teacher, and she was telling a scenario where she's talking to her kids, and she uses, a missing animal or pet. And the kids kind of, yeah, we would help that person find their pet. And it's just because, one, they like pets, they want to be helpful. And I think you just have to continuously train them on that. Yeah. Because that's not their norm.
Yeah, you got to walk them through those scenarios. Like that's what I did with my son. Even if they say mommy said get in the car with them, because that was the scenario in Bossier Parish. No, do not get in the car with them. You know, I want to make sure that they know regardless, because a lot of times those people will try any situation they can to get the kid in their car.
You know, when I go to the store, a lot of times my little girl, she sees something and then she wants to kind of stay back and play with whatever it is. And I'm always telling her to stay in front of me. I need to see you, because it just takes 1 second to put your hand over, someone put their hand over a child's mouth, press hard, and they can't say anything. You know, and they just take them, and then I'm looking around like, where did she go? So that really, really scared me too. So I always try to tell her to always stay in front of me.
And sometimes as parents, I was talking to another agent, and he mentioned a pet peeve is you see the van or the truck or whatever your family vehicle is, and it's got the stick figures, it's got mom, dad, Jack, Jill, and all the siblings. What if, following that individual around to a grocery store or to a park, and I run up and say, hey, your mom Jill just said Fifi, because I'm getting all this information from your car. Just heard, she's got to go. I work with her. She said, you can come with me. And I know Jack, your dad Jack, we're going to link up with him later, whatever that may be. But it gives so much. And for a young person, it's like, okay, my mom's name, my dad's name, my pet's name. Okay, I'll go with you.
That is crazy. I never, ever thought about that.
I always thought about it with the specialized plates, though. I never thought about it with the little decals that I see all the time.
Them, right?
But, with the specialized plates, a lot of people do the last name or whatever, and then, it may be a hunch to say, a last name may not be whatever, but some stranger could say, Miss such and such told me that's your mom, right? Oh, man. That's scary. That's scary. You mentioned something, Agent Cantrell, about trafficking. And that is a big, big issue now across the country and right here even in Shreveport-Bossier. How big of an issue is it here locally?
We've had a task force that's been set up since 2008. And it involves like the internet crimes against children as well as trafficking, and it is big because of the corridor from Dallas to Atlanta. Now 49 open up, and we historically have rescued a child between the 13 and 14 age once a month. So
Wow.
that's any child
In our area?
In our area.
What? So wait, give me an example. That really, really scares me here.
Well, when it comes to trafficking, so we're, it's a proverbial pimp has a couple of girls. Usually there's a juvenile in there, and they're moving. So if you've got a young lady, she may be runaway. A lot of these start out as runaways, or bad home. And I hate to use the term throwaway, but there's no out. Well, that's perfect for the grooming, whether it's in person or it's on an app or it's through an internet site. So you develop that, basically a false sense of security and love.
Yeah.
And then, hey, you're part of the family, and we're moving. We've rescued girls that have don't even Shreveport, don't even know anything. They heard about Louisiana in a class. They don't know where they are because they keep them disorganized on those routes. And so it turns out it's love. You're part of the family. Well, now we need money, and you need to work, and this is what you're going to do.
Oh my God.
How difficult is it to get out of that situation? That's got to be hard.
It's extremely difficult, and it's tough for these victims because one, it's a mental, you're caught into it, and you hear many people say just walk away. It's not that easy. It isn't. There is an entire process. So it's hard to get away. There's a fear factor. Usually these involve force, coercion. So there's that part to it. And we've had some very violent individuals. We've had girls who were just beaten to comply. So it's hard to walk away.
Wow. And I imagine when you rescue these young ladies, they're thankfully relieved that somebody came to save me. They probably thought they were getting into something that didn't seem,
Well, I will tell you, and you'll be surprised, it's usually not that. We don't get that at first. We're the bad.
They want to
They're
stay.
mad at you for taking
Yes.
Wow.
We're taking away out of that security and that secure. So a lot of times we work with our non-governmental organization. We work with them, and then they come in. The FBI also has a victim witness specialist program, so we send our victim specialists to kind of get them. It's normally in the treatment that you find out, yeah, I'm so glad you just said, but those initial responses, they're not nice.
They're probably brainwashed.
Exactly.
brainwashed.
You're
Get back
taking
into their
well, you're
heads.
taking them out of that, or there's the fear of I'm going to suffer because I got arrested because I'm not taking this money back. So there is a lot that goes on there, but very, very seldom do I get the thank you very much. I think I've had it actually twice in my career, 18 years of
And
work.
it wasn't right off? It was after a while?
It was, well, I've had two that were right off. One that was the first time, high school student, straight A's, just groomed, got caught in a bad situation, and thankfully we were able to, catch during the first time. But very seldom does it happen that they're.
Wow.
You were saying that the recovery for kids who are kidnapped to non-strangers is quite high. What's the recovery for trafficking? It's probably a lot lower, I would imagine.
Yeah, it is, and
Because the numbers are high.
the numbers are higher, and you're looking at the runaways. So you mentioned earlier the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, their database or their running tally for runaways. A lot of those runaways are caught up in that. So it is hard. They're always on the go. They're in that mode or that mindset, so they're not reaching out. Depending on what background they came from, the parents may not aggressively be seeking that or just assume they run away. So it is harder. We do a lot of operations trying to recover adults and juveniles because in those numbers you will get a juvenile, but a lot of our adults started out that way.
It really makes me look at, when we get the news releases of missing, not missing, but runaway children, when we
Yes.
get them in, it makes me look at it a little differently to get that out, as we always do, immediately on Facebook and to share that. And the numbers are always very, very high because people probably are thinking the same thing. We got to share this to protect this young lady or young man that may have run away. What should your child do if he or she is grabbed?
I say fight, scream, make a scene, and I have these tough conversations with my children as well, and it's kind of what you as a parent feel comfortable with. But they may threaten, I'm going to hurt you, your dad, or whatever that may be. But I tell my daughter, it's going to happen. They're not going to hurt. You need to fight. You need to make a scene. The proverbial dying cockroach, lay down. If you're on a bike, grab the bike. Sometimes you see scenarios where it's like it just the child goes. but make it hard. Because usually it's a quick time. I'm going to try to grab this child and get him back to a vehicle and get out of there. But if your child just drops on the ground and starts screaming and kicking and making him or her a hard target, then that buys time and it gets them out, regardless of the threats. But again, the crucial time is after an abduction is I think on average 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
And that's what we're fighting. So if we can avoid even getting in that process, to one, stay away, or if you're grabbed, to just scream, yell, fight, scratch, whatever you can do to buy time, scare that individual away, and break contact, draw attention.
6 hours is not a lot of time.
No, it's not.
How often does the FBI get involved within that 6 hour time span? Because you say it goes to the local departments first. I mean, and they have to probably take precautions to make sure this is the right scenario. It's not a runaway. It's not. So how often do you guys get involved within that 6 hour time span?
Well, in a scenario that's an abduction, where that's pretty quick. Depending on the location, we try hopefully within an hour, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes we're fighting time there. If it's a runaway, it's a little bit different scenario. We get the report and we start, looking at our databases. We push the information out. So runaways treated just a little bit different because of the urgency, but all the victims. But yeah, so on an abduction, it's a challenge, and that's why that's our job to make those relationships so we can get those. But you may have a rural area. We've had a situation where you have a rural area, and by the time it gets to you, it's several hours into it.
Is there a difference in your, probably not, but I'm going to ask this anyways. Is there a difference in your immediacy for a younger child compared to like a woman? Because we've seen some college students who've been abducted here recently, and they've disappeared. Do you go about that a different way when it's a child and an adult, a female?
Not necessarily in a different way. Our involvement may be different just because of our federal guidelines on what we're investigating. But anytime we're called upon, we support. So we'll support with agent resources, or a lot of times it's just technical stuff that we can help out on, or maybe a phone issue, or kind of just some resources that we can apply from our analytical view. So it's not so much different, but our involvement may change just because if it's an adult, it may not be a federal violation. Now, if it's a kidnapping or something like that, but it just kind of depends on the situation.
Every scenario is different.
Every scenario is different. We will always be there to support, but every scenario is different.
Wow, that's some good insight.
It is mind-blowing.
It is
with the sex trafficking, especially. What is the youngest age of I know you said maybe a teenager, but are they younger than that, or?
The average age is 13 that they get into when it comes to trafficking. I have had them younger. I've had cases with them younger, but that's more if they're being trafficked by a family member. Unfortunately, we've had parents who traffic their children. So those usually are the younger ages because they have access.
Yeah, oh my goodness.
But as far as traditioning traffic that happens outside the home, it's the average age is 13.
How should a parent approach a child they think may be speaking to someone on an app or what have you? They may have some concerns about, hey, she or he may be contacted by somebody, her attitude has changed, her lifestyle has changed, you're noticing some weird things. What do they do to sit down and approach them? Because a lot of times these kids don't want to hear it.
Right.
What do you as a parent say?
Well, if it's your child, hopefully that communication is already set, but you have to report that because those are perfect signs. Withdrawal, dressing more as an adult, fingers, hair, all different, different clothing, multiple phones. Those are all signs of somebody who's being groomed or being provided gifts, or possibly already in working in a trafficking situation.
Hopefully the best way to kind of stave that off is to be involved and check those phones, periodically.
My kids are in trouble. They are in trouble. I'm sure yours are too. I'm never going to leave them alone. They're not going to have any privacy.
No. I mean, even now, my 5-year-old, she has a little mini iPad, and we've downloaded like little games for her to play. And, but I find sometimes that some of and I won't call the names of the specialty channels, You know, they start off kid friendly and then they line up with all this extra stuff on the side. And so sometimes we do a check. Let's look at your iPad and go back. And I mean, I'm not saying that she's looking at anything totally inappropriate at all, but I mean, they have like things like little kid brides kissing each other like a little kid.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Not ready for that.
No.
Yeah, you can get on a wormhole on some of those sites and not know how did I get here?
Yeah.
What am I
trying to
looking
clear
at?
the browsing history and everything, but definitely stay on top of those iPads.
You cannot count on the app itself to provide protective measures. You've got to train because it's going to happen. This is where they are. Everything's app based or on the computer, so you have to train them to those vulnerabilities. And I tell parents, you got to let them tell you. And some of it might be scary, but I mean, if you're going to be the parents like you'll never have the internet, I'm taking away your phone. That's going to be hard to do in this day and age. So you've got to be able to have that relationship where they can tell you and you don't panic.
Right.
And you get people involved.
It's so hard to do that.
I know.
That's one thing that I try to tell my son all the time, because sometimes I don't know if he's just too embarrassed to tell me something that happened at school or whatever, but I always try to tell him, you can tell mommy anything. I'm not going to make fun of you. I'm not going to be embarrassed by what you say. You can tell me anything you want to say. And he's like, okay. 5 or 10 minutes go by and he's like, well, I want to tell you about, so I feel like as a parent, it's important to reassure that to your child.
Yes.
Because if they don't hear it, they're never going to think, well, my mom doesn't want to hear that. It's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed. I think it's very important to reaffirm that you're there for them in those kinds of situations.
And be prepared for an answer so you can help.
Yeah.
One of our, and this may be another segment, one of our biggest issues.
Okay, you want to hang around?
One of the things we're dealing with, and especially with teens, is the whole sexting, taking inappropriate photos. And that is something that we see more and more because that leads to other things, sextortion, where now the person says, okay, thank you, now I want this, this, and this. It puts a child in a bad position. And it goes back to, I have 500 friends, so if you're being extorted, and now I know where you go to school, I know your favorite sport, I know kind of your pattern of life, now I got a lot, because now, if you don't do this for me, I'm going to your church, because you go to this church, and this is your pastor, because it's all online, or I'm going to your school. So
That's another scary thing.
Yes, definitely. Oh my goodness.
Well, we want to thank you, Chris, for coming and being part of the KSLA Cafe. This has been very eye-opening, very great. I think a lot of parents need to hear exactly what you were telling us because, sometimes you don't know how to approach the conversation.
Right.
And sometimes you question yourself. I questioned myself. I wondered if I really got it through to my son to what to watch out for and if I said the right things, and you just never know. So I think having this information is definitely good.
Maybe role playing. I mean, with your kids, definitely role playing to see what they're going to do in a situation. If somebody came up with a cute little dog or a cat, or show me what you're going to do.
That's a good idea too. I love that.
Well, thank you, because being proactive, there's not a whole lot we can do in this crime. So this is nice. If we can get out and educate and get people to report, it's a win-win for us, so thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Agent Cantrell.
We are going to have plenty of details on what you need to do as far as how you can handle a situation, keeping you safe. I know you've been keeping up with that quite a bit too.
Definitely, if you have any topics about keeping you safe, we want to explore them, we want to investigate them, and have different topics on the KSLA Cafe that leads to different stories that we can share with our viewers. Please email me at dben@ksla.com, or you can go to Dominique Ben KSLA Facebook page and send me a message there.
That's right. All right. Hope you have a great day.